Welcome to True Echo, where untold stories find a voice. In today's powerful tale, one woman's quiet strength in the face of discrimination sparks a storm that rocks a billion-dollar airline to its core. This isn't just about a seat on a plane, it's about dignity, justice, and a moment that lit a fire across the internet. This is the story of how one black woman, armed with nothing but her phone and her conviction, made a global corporation beg for mercy. Stay with us. Monica Traylor wasn't new to hard work. She'd built her entire career on it. A criminal defense attorney with 15 years of sweat behind her name, she had spent most of her life in courtrooms, defending others with a fierce resolve but rarely taking a moment for herself. Her life was a calendar of deadlines, cross-examinations, and lonely dinners reheated at midnight. But now, for the first time in years, Monica had finally carved out something rare and precious: time. Her best friend Kenya was turning 50, and Monica had promised, sworn even, that she'd be there in Los Angeles to celebrate. No court cases, no client emergencies. Just one weekend to remember what joy felt like. And she wasn't flying coach this time. No, after years of scraping by and earning every inch of her success, Monica had booked herself a first-class ticket from Savannah, Georgia to LA. She wanted comfort, legroom, maybe even a glass of champagne. She wanted to feel like her years of labor meant something. That morning she dressed the way she always did, elegant, understated. A navy blue blazer, a cream silk blouse, tailored jeans that fit her just right, and a single gold gavel pin resting near her collarbone. It was a nod to her profession, a tiny badge of pride she rarely wore. Her tote bag held only the essentials: laptop, case files, a travel-sized bottle of her favorite jasmine perfume, and a leather-bound journal with the words "Stand Tall" embossed in gold. But something gnawed at her. That voice, the one so many people of color know intimately, whispered, "Don't get too comfortable." She silenced it. She had earned this. At Savannah/Hilton Head International, the signs started small. The check-in agent barely looked at her, didn't smile, didn't say a word beyond ID and confirmation number. Monica told herself not to read into it. Maybe the woman was just having a bad morning. At TSA she got the full pat-down. Again. She'd lost count how many times it had happened. She gave the agent a polite nod, even as her dignity took another small cut. In the first-class lounge she waited. And waited. Bartenders chatted with other passengers. People in business suits got free drink refills with a wink and a smile. Monica? 20 minutes before someone even asked what she wanted. She texted Kenya half joking, "If they treat me like this in the lounge, I can't wait to see what happens on the plane." Kenya responded with 3 laughing emojis and a message that felt like an invisible arm around her shoulder. "Girl, just enjoy it. You paid for it like everybody else." When the call for first-class boarding rang out, Monica rose. She smoothed her blazer, slipped her phone into her pocket, and walked toward the gate with her head high. Her boarding pass beeped green. But as she approached the plane, her moment of peace shattered. Standing at the door was a flight attendant with the rigid posture of someone used to saying no. Her name tag read Shelley. Arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Monica greeted her with a polite smile and held out her ticket. "Are you sure you're in the right place, ma'am?" Shelley asked, her tone tight, skeptical. Monica blinked. For a moment she thought she misheard. She glanced at the ticket again. "Seat 2A, first class." Confirmed. "Paid in full." "Yes, I'm sure," she said evenly. "Here's my boarding pass." Shelley took it with a look that suggested she was handling a forged document. "There must be a mistake," she said. "First class is full." Monica tilted her head. "Full?" she echoed slowly. "But I have my assigned seat. 2A. Behind her, the line was growing. People shifted, sighed, watched. Another flight attendant appeared, younger, red-haired, clipboard in hand. She glanced at the pass, then at Shelley. "What's the issue?" Shelley leaned in and whispered, but loud enough for Monica to hear, "I think she's confused." Probably meant coach. Coach. The word hit like a slap. It wasn't just a mistake, it was an assumption. A judgment. "I'm not confused," Monica said clearly, her voice rising just enough to be heard by those nearby. "I purchased a first-class ticket. This is my seat." The red-haired attendant gave a nervous laugh. "Let me just check something real quick," she said and disappeared toward the cockpit. Shelley didn't budge. "Maybe you can wait in the back until we sort it out," she suggested, her tone no longer hiding the irritation. "You want me to wait in coach?" Monica said, her words deliberate. "For a first-class seat I already paid for?" "It's just while we sort it out, ma'am," Shelley replied. The anger boiled low in Monica's stomach. But she wouldn't raise her voice. Wouldn't make it easy for them to call her angry or disruptive. She would do something more powerful. "I'll wait," she said, "but I'll be waiting right here." And with that, Monica planted her feet. The line behind her murmured, "Restless." Some passengers muttered under their breath, blaming her for the delay. But she stood still, calm, unyielding. Then quietly she reached into her tote, pulled out her phone and hit record. Suddenly everything changed. Shelley's arms dropped to her sides. The fake customer service smile reappeared, strained and too wide. "Ma'am, there's really no need to record," she said sweetly. "I like to have a record," Monica answered, steady as stone. "In case anyone accuses me of being confused again." A few people in line stirred, watching now with less annoyance, more curiosity. A man in a suit coughed and stepped back. A woman with a baby nodded silently in support. The red-haired attendant returned, this time with a man in a navy blazer and a security badge clipped to his belt. "Rick," his name tag said. He smiled tightly. "Good morning, ma'am. Let's step aside and have a quick chat, all right?" Monica didn't flinch. "No thank you," she said. "I have my boarding pass. I have my seat. I'll board just like everyone else." Rick shifted, uneasy. "It'll just take a second. We can sort this out without causing a scene." Monica tilted her head. "Am I causing a scene? Or are you embarrassed because I'm recording the way you're treating me?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "She's right." Rick looked down at her phone. Everything he said was being recorded, every word, every pause. He sighed, then turned to the red-haired attendant. "Double-check her seat, please." She vanished again, leaving Monica exactly where she stood, calm, composed, unwavering. In her mind, this moment had morphed into something bigger than a boarding error. She was standing up not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. And Monica had no intention of moving. Seconds ticked by, then minutes. The red-haired attendant returned with an awkward stiffness in her gait, her face drained of color. She leaned into Rick and whispered urgently. His expression didn't shift right away, but Monica saw it, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the way his shoulders slumped with reluctant understanding. Rick turned to Monica and cleared his throat, forcing a smile that had no weight. "Apologies, ma'am. There was a system error. Your seat 2A is ready for you." He stepped aside, motioning toward the cabin. The path was finally open. Without acknowledging Shelley, without a single word to the line of passengers who now watched with awkward silence, Monica walked forward. She moved with grace, but her every step was a statement, measured, composed, and unwavering. She passed through the threshold and into the luxurious first-class cabin where only minutes ago, she had been told she didn't belong. The seat was pristine, untouched. She placed her leather tote under the seat in front of her, adjusted her blazer and buckled her seatbelt. Her phone was still recording, resting subtly in her hand. She stopped the video and posted the first clip with a caption as simple as it was devastating. "Paid for first class. Treated like a criminal. Stay tuned." She didn't add hashtags. She didn't rant. She let the footage speak for itself, her standing calmly, being denied access, the unspoken tension in Shelley's face, and the unmistakable prejudice etched into every gesture. By the time the plane lifted off the runway, her post was already spreading. Monica closed her eyes, but rest didn't come. Instead, her phone buzzed in waves. Kenya texted first, "Girl, you're blowing up. That video." Monica stared at the screen. She hadn't expected this. She had hoped for justice, maybe an apology. But what she didn't anticipate was the digital wildfire. Comments poured in, support, outrage, solidarity. Strangers shared their own stories. Public figures reposted the clip. Journalists reached out for interviews. By the time she landed in Los Angeles, her post had been shared over 200,000 times. When she stepped off the plane, she wasn't anonymous anymore. A few people pointed as she moved through the terminal. Some nodded with respect. Others approached her, timid but enthusiastic. Two young black women in USC sweatshirts rushed over, barely hiding their excitement. "Are you the woman from the plane?" one asked breathlessly. Monica smiled, caught off guard by the recognition. "Depends," she joked. "Good or bad?" "Good," the other girl beamed. "You kept your cool. You made your point. You didn't back down." The validation hit deeper than she expected. Monica wasn't used to being seen for her strength outside of a courtroom. But this was different. She hadn't been wearing a suit or standing behind a lectern. She had just stood. At her hotel, a sleek downtown high-rise with a view of the city's sprawl, Monica finally exhaled. The bed welcomed her like an old friend. She lay back, eyes on the ceiling, her mind spinning not from fatigue, but momentum. Her phone buzzed again. Kenya. You okay? Her voice was a bomb, gentle but charged. Monica sat up. I think so. I didn't think it would get this big. Kenya laughed softly. Girl, people are tired. Tired of pretending this stuff doesn't happen. You just caught it in 4K. Monica shook her head. I didn't want to fight. But you didn't run from one either, Kenya replied, firm. And now you've got the mic. That night, Monica sat in bed scrolling through the tidal wave of messages. Among them, one cold, impersonal email. Subject, urgent, passenger relations inquiry. From the airline's corporate office. The message was short, almost panicked in tone. They wanted to speak. They wanted to discuss a mutually satisfactory resolution. They apologized for any inconvenience. Monica stared at the screen. They weren't reaching out because they cared, they were trying to contain the fallout. Every second her post gained traction, the airline bled trust. Bled customers. And Monica for once held the leverage. The next morning her inbox flooded with more. Requests for interviews, feature stories, offers for appearances. But the most significant was another email from the airline. This time from the legal department. The tone had shifted from cautious to desperate. Words like sincere regret, unfortunate misunderstanding, and corporate commitment to diversity littered the screen like confetti thrown in panic. They weren't just acknowledging the mistake, they were begging her to help clean it up. Monica didn't respond. Instead she watched. She saw their social media team scrambling, disabling comments on recent posts. She saw passengers publicly canceling bookings. She saw her name trending alongside hashtags like #LetHerSit and #FirstClassJustice. Her story had struck a nerve not just because it was outrageous but because it was familiar. Too many people had stood where Monica stood, unseen, disrespected, dismissed. The next day her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered cautiously. Miss Trailer? A woman's voice asked. This is Christine. I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience. Monica didn't say anything. I wanted to personally apologize, Christine continued. What happened at the gate was unacceptable. We are reviewing our internal procedures. Monica cut in, calm but commanding. You're not calling because you're sorry. You're calling because everyone saw. There was a pause. I appreciate the apology, Monica added, but this isn't about free flights. You had employees who saw a black woman in a blazer and decided she didn't belong. That's not a system error. That's a cultural one. Christine stumbled. We're launching new bias training programs, reviewing staffing protocols. Good, Monica said. Because I'm not just accepting your apology. I want accountability. I want a public statement. I want your staff retrained. I want a donation to a nonprofit that fights discrimination in travel. And I want the full compensation you offered. A long silence. Then Christine quietly, we can make that happen, Miss Trailer? Monica nodded to herself. Because if you don't, this story isn't going anywhere. She hung up. And just like that, the battle shifted. From a blocked gate to a national stage. The city of Los Angeles buzzed with its usual rhythm. Horns blaring, sunlight glinting off high-rise windows, the distant thrum of a chopper overhead. But for Monica, everything was unusually still. Sitting at a corner table of a modest cafe in Pasadena, she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly as her phone vibrated again, lighting up with a new headline, Attorney blocked from first class sparks nationwide outrage. Beneath it, a subheading, Airline VP apologizes, settlement in progress, public demands more. She had said no to the first 3 interview requests. She didn't want to be the face of a movement. But something inside her had shifted. This wasn't about her ego or revenge, it was about power. The kind of power rarely afforded to black women like her. And now that she had it, Monica wasn't going to waste it. She refreshed her inbox. Another email from Christine. Subject, immediate action statement, request for review before publication. Attached was a draft of the airline's official apology. It included her name, the incident, an acknowledgement of the discrimination she faced, and a list of steps they were prepared to take. Mandatory bias training for all gate and cabin staff, a public donation to a racial equity initiative, and the formation of a third-party oversight committee. Monica read it twice. Was good. Polished. Professional. But it didn't go far enough. She pulled up her keyboard and began to type. Thank you for the draft. I need the statement to include 2 things it currently doesn't. 1, an explicit admission that race was a factor. 2. A commitment to internal transparency. Publish the results of your internal investigation. Not just to me. To everyone. She hit send. It was a bold move. Most companies would balk at airing their dirty laundry. But Monica knew how the game was played. They had two options: give the public the truth or lose control of the narrative completely. By the following afternoon, Monica's demands were met. The airline issued a revised statement, one that sent shockwaves across the industry. It was raw, more candid than corporate apologies typically allowed. For once, the language wasn't cloaked in legal ambiguity. It said what needed to be said. We failed Monica Trailer. We failed our values. And we failed our passengers. The actions taken by our employees were not just unprofessional, they were discriminatory. We accept full responsibility. It didn't erase the humiliation she felt standing at the gate, ticket in hand, being treated like an imposter. But it mattered. It set precedent. It gave language to the thousands of others who'd faced the same kind of erasure. Kenya called that night, breathless with pride. "Girl, I don't know if you realize what you've just done. I just saw a think piece in Forbes about the future of racial equity in aviation, and it had your face on it." Monica chuckled dryly. "They didn't even want to let me sit down last week. Now I'm the poster child for progress." "Because you didn't move," Kenya said. "You made them come to you. That's power." But with visibility came something else Monica hadn't prepared for: scrutiny. A few conservative pundits had started sniffing around. One anchor on a cable news show questioned whether Monica had weaponized victimhood for clout. Another blog posted a poorly edited video trying to claim the airline had made a reasonable mistake. Monica knew it was coming. Anytime a black woman stood her ground, there'd be someone ready to call it a tantrum. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she posted a follow-up video. No makeup, no filter. Just her, speaking plainly into her phone from her hotel room. "I didn't ask to go viral. I asked to sit in the seat I paid for. But if you think my dignity is something I should have bartered or begged for, then you've already told on yourself. This isn't about clout. This is about every person who's ever been told they didn't belong, even when they did everything right." The video hit 2 million views in under 12 hours. And something extraordinary began to happen. Other people started coming forward. Black women, elderly passengers, Muslim travelers, disabled veterans. People who had been pushed aside, second-guessed, denied access. Not because they didn't qualify but because they didn't look like they did. Stories flooded in, some decades old, some from just the week before. Monica began compiling them into a digital archive, the Gatekeeper Files. She worked with a few volunteer coders who had reached out after seeing her story. Together, they created a public platform to report and track discriminatory incidents in air travel. It was simple, user-friendly, and already drawing hundreds of submissions. Reporters noticed. So did other airlines. A CNN reporter called it a digital reckoning. A Delta executive quietly emailed Monica, requesting to discuss collaboration on equity initiatives. Even a group of whistleblowers from her airline reached out, detailing long-standing issues with internal bias complaints being buried. What began as a single viral post was now a national audit. Monica returned to Savannah a week later. The flight crew recognized her this time, not with suspicion but with respect. One of the attendants quietly pressed a handwritten note into her hand. "Thank you for standing up. We see it too." Back at home, her apartment felt smaller somehow, like the world had expanded beyond its walls. Her voicemail was full, her inbox overflowing. Her life was no longer just legal briefs and case files. She was a movement now. But as she stood in her modest kitchen making tea, she caught her reflection in the microwave door. Same blazer. Same face. Same gold gavel pin. And she realized the only thing that had changed was that she had stopped waiting for permission. Permission to speak. To take up space. To demand better. And once she had stopped waiting, nothing could silence her again. Days blurred into a rhythm of phone calls, speaking engagements, and press requests. Monica had become something of an unwilling icon. A face that now carried weight in conversations about justice, race, and travel equity. What began as a solitary act of defiance in a narrow jet bridge had grown into a nationwide conversation. But for Monica, the whirlwind wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about responsibility. Her inbox continued to swell. Teachers, nurses, college students, CEOs, they all reached out. Some sent their own stories of being profiled, passed over, or dismissed. Others simply thanked her for holding the line. There was a gravity to it, the kind of burden Monica had never trained for in law school, being the symbol of a movement. Then came the call that changed everything. "Miss Trailer, this is Elaine Goodwin from the Department of Transportation's Office for Civil Rights." Monica straightened instinctively, phone pressed tighter to her ear. "We've reviewed your footage and statement," Elaine continued. "It's prompted a formal review into complaint processing protocols across all major airlines. What you did, what you exposed, has bigger implications than you might realize. We'd like to meet." Monica agreed. The meeting took place in Atlanta, a city humming with history and quiet revolution. In a glass-walled conference room with a dozen officials, Monica sat calmly at the head of the table. She wasn't there as an activist or even a victim. She was there as a catalyst. They showed her data. Thousands of complaints filed over the years about racial profiling in air travel, most of them quietly closed, labeled as insufficient evidence or customer misunderstanding. But now, with her footage and the public outcry surrounding it, they had something more than anecdote. They had momentum. Elaine leaned forward. "We're proposing a passenger protection amendment, something enforceable. We want your help shaping it." Monica paused. "I'm not a policymaker." "You're exactly who we need," Elaine replied. "You know what it feels like. That matters more than any memo." The days that followed were filled with drafting sessions, video conferences, strategy calls. Monica wasn't just speaking out, she was helping write what could become the first real set of federal protections against discriminatory gatekeeping practices in commercial aviation. Back in Savannah, things moved slower. At the courthouse, Monica's co-workers greeted her with a mix of admiration and awe. Even the judges, usually immune to outside noise, had heard of what she'd done. One clerk, an older black man named Leonard, shook her hand in the hallway. "You didn't just get your seat," he said quietly. "You opened the door for all of us who never thought we could knock." The weight of that statement settled on Monica's shoulders like a tailored coat, fitting but heavy. One evening, Monica stood on the balcony of her apartment, sipping a glass of wine, watching planes cut silently across the horizon. Kenya called. "Still breathing?" her friend teased. "Barely," Monica said with a soft laugh. "I didn't sign up for any of this, you know?" "You didn't have to," Kenya replied. "It found you. And you didn't run." There was a pause. "I worry sometimes," Monica admitted, "that people will twist this, that they'll turn it into some brand. I didn't do this for clicks or clout." "Monica," Kenya said, her voice low and sure, "you did this because it was right. And no matter how big it gets, the truth is still yours." The next morning, Monica received a text from her assistant at the firm. "CBS, NBC, and The View just reached out again. Also, the airline CEO is requesting a private meeting." Monica didn't answer immediately. She needed time to figure out what she wanted next. Not just from them but from herself. When she finally did respond, it was with a single sentence: "Tell them I'll meet, on one condition." Her condition was simple. The meeting had to take place not in a corporate skyscraper, but at a local community center in Atlanta. She wanted it public. She wanted students, teachers, and passengers present. And most of all, she wanted the airline to listen. Surprisingly, they agreed. The following week, Monica walked into the East Side Cultural Center to find rows of folding chairs, a podium, and cameras. Local media had shown up, of course. But so had something rarer: real people. The kind who fly economy and get pulled aside randomly at TSA. The kind who clutch their boarding passes tighter because deep down, they're always a little afraid someone will say, "You don't belong." The CEO of the airline, a man named Michael Barnes, stood beside her. His tie too perfect, his words too rehearsed. But Monica didn't let that shake her. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped forward, no notes in hand, just her truth. "You all saw the video. You saw what happened. But what matters more is what comes after. We can't just react to moments like mine, we have to build systems that prevent them. This isn't about a single gate agent or one mistake. It's about how easily dignity can be denied when someone decides you don't look like you belong." She paused, letting her words sink in. The airline has made promises. Now they have to deliver. And we have to keep watching. The room erupted in applause, not the polite kind but the kind that builds from the gut, raw and real. That night, the news cycle lit up again. Monica Trailer forces airline to face the music. Public accountability town hall makes history. And yet, Monica knew the work wasn't done. The next day, as she boarded another flight, this time for a legal summit in Chicago, she carried the same tote, wore the same gold gavel pin. But the gate agent greeted her with a warm smile. Her name was spoken with familiarity, with reverence. She was offered coffee. No one second-guessed her seat. It was a small moment, but it echoed. Because this time, when Monica took her seat in 2A, the entire plane knew why it mattered. Monica's seatbelt clicked into place with a soft metallic snap. It felt symbolic now, like she wasn't just securing herself for a flight, but anchoring herself into a role that had found her without invitation. The cabin around her buzzed softly, attendants preparing for takeoff, passengers arranging pillows and plugging in headphones. Monica sat quietly, eyes closed, her breath slow and steady. But her rest was brief. The woman seated in 2B, a middle-aged Latina in a sharp gray pantsuit, leaned toward her with a smile. "You're Monica, right?" she asked gently. "From the video?" Monica opened her eyes and nodded, prepared for another round of praise or questions. But instead, the woman reached into her bag and pulled out a small photograph. It showed a young girl, maybe 10 years old, grinning with gap-toothed joy at an airport gate. "That's my daughter Anna," the woman said. "She saw your video. I showed it to her on purpose. I wanted her to know she doesn't have to shrink herself to fit in. So thank you." Monica's throat tightened. The weight of what she had set in motion continued to ripple far beyond any headlines or hashtags. She touched the photo with reverence. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. The plane took off, but Monica's thoughts remained grounded, entwined with the realization that her fight was no longer just hers. Every time she spoke, every interview she gave, every panel she sat on now had the potential to shift someone's reality. And that power came with a price. Back in Savannah, she was receiving pushback, not from the public but from her own profession. Some at the firm where she had worked for over a decade had grown uneasy. They didn't say it outright, of course, but the looks lingered longer. The meetings became shorter. Her case assignments dwindled. One afternoon, she was called into the managing partner's office. David Monroe. Silver hair. Crisp suits. The kind of man who had once told her she was too good for diversity hire quotas. "I'll make this quick," he said, not bothering with small talk. "The board's concerned that your media presence might be distracting." Monica raised an eyebrow. "Distracting from what?" "The clients who hired me because of it." "It's not that we don't support your cause," David added, trying and failing to look sincere. "We just believe there's a time and place for activism. And the courtroom isn't it." Monica stared at him, unblinking. "Then maybe it's time I take the courtroom elsewhere." She walked out without waiting for a response. That night, Monica sat alone on her living room floor, a glass of wine untouched beside her, her phone buzzing endlessly in the background. For a moment she felt the isolation creep in. Was she burning bridges or building something new? But then another message appeared. This one from a woman named Eliza, an attorney in New York who had started her own firm after being overlooked one too many times. "Saw what you said at the community meeting. If you're ever ready to build something outside their system, let's talk." Monica replied almost immediately, "Let's." Within weeks they formed a partnership, Equity First Legal Collective. A small but powerful team of women of color, all with elite credentials and hard-won grit. They specialized in civil rights litigation, anti-discrimination suits, and systemic reform. What started as a casual message turned into a revolution in legal advocacy. And Monica was at the heart of it. Their first big case? A class-action lawsuit against the airline that had denied her seat, filed on behalf of 37 former and current employees who had come forward with internal reports of racial bias, workplace retaliation, and wrongful termination. This wasn't about optics anymore. This was war. The media lit up again. The public, already engaged, now had more fuel. The airline issued more statements, more reassurances, but the narrative was no longer theirs to control. Monica and her team weren't just demanding reform. They were proving the problem went deeper than gate agents and miscommunications. They had documents, testimonies, emails with language that could crush careers. And yet, through it all, Monica remained composed, unshaken. At a press conference outside the federal courthouse, surrounded by her clients, janitors, pilots, former HR managers, Monica stood at the mic and said, "This isn't about one seat. It never was. It's about who gets to feel safe, respected, and seen when they walk into an airport, a boardroom, or a courtroom. And who gets told, quietly or violently, that they don't belong." Her voice never wavered. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. But it was the people in the crowd, the working mothers, the young students, the retired flight attendants, who leaned forward with fierce eyes and full hearts. They weren't just watching history. They were part of it. Later that evening, as Monica walked the quiet streets of downtown Savannah, she passed a mural in progress on the side of a brick building. It hadn't been there before. A local artist was painting it, half-finished but unmistakable. A black woman, standing tall, holding a boarding pass in one hand and a scale of justice in the other. Beneath her feet, a broken chain. Above her head, clouds parting. Monica stopped, breath caught in her throat. The artist noticed her. "Didn't think you'd walk by tonight," he said, paintbrush poised midair. Monica stepped closer. "Is that supposed to be me?" He grinned. "It's supposed to be all of us. But yeah, you lit the match." She stared up at the figure on the wall. Strong. Determined. Unapologetic. For the first time in weeks, Monica let herself feel it fully, not the rage, not the pressure, but the pride. The quiet, sacred pride of knowing she had done what so many had been too afraid to do. She hadn't sat down. She hadn't moved aside. She had stood. The mural was finished by the weekend. Local news stations covered its unveiling. Children from nearby schools came to see it on field trips, their teachers pointing up and saying things like, "That's what courage looks like." Monica never asked for that wall, never paid for the paint, never once asked to be turned into a symbol. But now that she was one, she knew she had to honor it. Her life moved faster now. The days were filled with case filings, court appearances, and cross-country travel for speaking engagements. She had never intended to become a public figure, but her inbox overflowed with event invitations, from Ivy League panels on systemic bias to grassroots organizing sessions in church basements. The audiences changed, but the message stayed the same. Power is not given. It's reclaimed. But power, she realized, came with enemies. The backlash had started as online noise, anonymous trolls posting racial slurs, right-wing blogs spinning her story as overblown. But then it escalated. Her law firm's website was hacked. Threatening letters arrived at her office. One particularly vile envelope contained a printed photo of her standing in front of the mural, with a red X drawn across her face. For a moment it all felt like too much. Late one night, Monica sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through comments under one of her recent interviews. Most were supportive, but some burned. "She's just another angry black woman playing the race card. Hope she enjoys her 15 minutes. This is why we fly private." Monica stared at her reflection in the darkened window. Her gold gavel pin lay on the nightstand beside her. She had taken it off without realizing. It looked small now, delicate, almost fragile. She picked it up, turned it over in her hand. And she remembered. The courtroom in Birmingham where she won her first major case. The client who hugged her afterward, whispering, "You saved my life." The nights she'd slept at her desk just to keep fighting for someone who had no one else. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. And it wouldn't be the last. The next morning, she walked into the office of Equity First Legal Collective and gathered her team. "I need to tell you something," she began, and the room quieted. "They're trying to scare me. Make me sit down. Make me stop." Eliza leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "What do you want to do?" Monica looked around the room, lawyers, paralegals, interns, each one with fire behind their eyes. "I want to push back harder." That day they launched a new initiative, Flight Forward, a legal advocacy and education project focused specifically on travelers' rights and racial equity in public and private transportation. The goal wasn't just to litigate, it was to arm people with the knowledge they needed to defend themselves before they were forced to record a confrontation. They partnered with airports, colleges, community centers, produced free downloadable guides, created workshops, even secured a monthly spot on a nationally syndicated radio show to answer live questions about discrimination in travel. Monica led the first workshop herself. It was held in a multipurpose room at a public library in Detroit. She stood in front of a crowd of 50 black men in suits, hijabi moms, a trans woman in aviation school, a disabled Vietnam vet with a service dog curled at his feet. She spoke for over an hour, but it was the final question that stuck. A teenage girl in the back, no more than 17, raised her hand. "What do you do when someone tells you you don't belong but everyone else just watches and lets them?" Monica didn't answer right away. She stepped out from behind the podium. Her voice softened. "You stand anyway," she said. "You stand so the next person won't have to wonder if they're alone. Because if even one person stands, it forces the rest to see." The girl nodded slowly, and in that moment, Monica knew she wasn't tired. She was just getting started. Meanwhile, the class action lawsuit gained traction. The airline tried to settle quietly, offering a sum that would have made most people fold. Monica refused. She didn't want silence. She wanted sunlight. Depositions revealed a pattern of racial profiling in gate decisions, record-keeping discrepancies, and even internal memos advising staff to be more visually cautious with non-traditional first-class passengers. The documents leaked. Public support surged again. Protests erupted at airports in 5 major cities. People carried signs that read, "Let her sit, Black passengers matter, and first class doesn't mean second class treatment." It was bigger than Monica now. It was everywhere. Then came the tipping point. The airline's chief operating officer resigned, quietly but not quietly enough. Sources close to the board leaked that his departure was tied directly to the scandal. Stock prices dipped. A shareholder meeting turned into a media firestorm when protesters disrupted it with printed photos of Monica and the 37 employees behind the class action suit. Monica watched it unfold from her office window. Across the street, a news crew was filming live as another story aired behind the anchor. Whistleblowers confirmed bias protocols and airline boarding policies. She took a deep breath. Then her phone rang. It was Christine again, the same VP who had once offered her hush money in the form of flights and a check. "Miss Traylor," Christine said, her voice thin with tension, "we'd like to formally settle, on your terms. We want this to end." Monica was silent for a moment, then replied, "It ends when it changes. Not before." And for the first time, Christine didn't argue. The next day, Monica received the signed agreement. The airline would pay out the full class settlement, publicly admit wrongdoing, fund a $5 million initiative to combat bias in air travel, and install Monica as a consultant for a new permanent board on equity in aviation. She stared at the letterhead. Then, without smiling, without weeping, she picked up her pen and signed her name. Not for herself, but for everyone who had ever stood in a jet bridge holding a ticket and still being treated like a trespasser. The ink had barely dried on the settlement when Monica stepped into the conference hall in Washington, D.C. The place was filled with delegates, industry leaders, civil rights advocates, and representatives from major airlines around the globe. The summit was the first of its kind, the Global Passenger Equity Forum, and Monica Traylor had been invited not just as a guest but as the keynote speaker. She stood backstage, her heart thudding softly. Kenya was by her side, adjusting the lapel of Monica's blazer, just like she had done at their law school graduation years ago. "You ready?" Kenya whispered. Monica nodded. For the first time in a long time, "Yeah." The room quieted as her name was announced. She stepped up to the podium, not as a viral video subject or reluctant hero, but as a woman who had turned injustice into an unstoppable force for change. 2 years ago, she began, I stood in a jet bridge with a first-class ticket and was told in so many words that I didn't belong. But I wasn't alone. I stood for every person who ever followed the rules, did everything right and was still denied. Denied dignity. Denied respect. Denied humanity. The room was silent. The kind of silence that listens. This isn't about first class. It's about first rights. The right to be seen, to be treated fairly, to move through the world without suspicion simply because of your skin, your accent, your clothes, or your faith. She looked up from the podium, eyes scanning the crowd. We cannot build systems that reward silence and punish presence. We cannot tell people they're equal while building gates that say otherwise. Applause rose slowly but built into a standing ovation. Monica didn't bask in it, she received it like a truth finally being recognized. After the summit, a new wave of momentum took root. Airports began incorporating mandatory anti-bias training. Airlines started reviewing surveillance footage to audit for profiling. Flight Forward, Monica's nonprofit initiative, received funding from unexpected places, tech companies, law schools, and even celebrity donors who had seen their own friends and family treated like they didn't belong. Monica didn't return to her old law firm. She didn't need to. Equity First Legal Collective grew into a nationwide network of attorneys focused on fighting injustice wherever it traveled. Schools, hospitals, government offices. The mural in Savannah was replicated in 5 other cities. One day while flying home from New York, Monica sat in seat 2A. The flight attendant, a young black man with a warm smile, knelt by her seat just before takeoff. I just wanted to say thank you, he said, voice low. Because of you, I got promoted. And they actually listen to us now. Monica smiled gently. Then you keep pushing. Make sure the door stays open behind you. He nodded, hand over his heart. Always. As the plane climbed into the clouds, Monica looked out the window. Below her, cities lit up like circuits, connected, alive, pulsing with people who had stories like hers. Her phone buzzed with another message. A mother from Chicago. Her son, 11 years old, had been racially profiled by airport security, but when she showed them Monica's flight rights card, a downloadable resource, everything changed. No argument. No escalation. Just respect. Monica stared at the screen. Not out of pride but purpose. She drafted one final post for her followers, the people who had lifted her voice until it couldn't be ignored. They told me I didn't belong in first class. So I built a better one, where everyone belongs and no one is judged for daring to sit in their rightful seat. Stay loud. Stay rooted. Stay ready. Because dignity doesn't ask for permission, and neither should you. Back on solid ground, Monica walked through the airport with her tote slung over one shoulder and her gavel pin gleaming in the light. No longer a passenger on the margins, she was now a conductor on a journey toward justice. She passed by a group of teenage girls taking a photo in front of one of the murals. One of them spotted her, eyes wide, then whispered something to her friends. They all turned. "Is that her?" one asked softly. Monica didn't break stride. She smiled as she walked past, saying just loud enough for them to hear, "You belong here too." And with that, she disappeared into the terminal, just another woman traveling on her own terms. At True Echo, we believe the most powerful stories are the ones that reflect the fight for dignity, justice, and unseen courage. Monica Traylor didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She stood, and in doing so made the world shift around her. Because sometimes the greatest form of protest is simply refusing to move. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Share it. Speak about it. Leave a comment and tell us how you stood your ground. And if you believe in stories that spark change, subscribe to True Echo. We tell the truth even when it's quiet.